Okay, with us now is Malcolm Kenyatta. He is a Pennsylvania state representative from Philly and chairman of the Biden administration's Commission on Black Americans. He's also part of the Biden-Harris national campaign. Okay, first, haul off. What do you have to say to what Senator Johnson had to say? Is he, are Democrats trying to encourage illegal immigrants to flood into the United States to vote for Joe Biden?
So to quote the fictional but ever quotable Logan Roy, these are not serious people. Everything that he just said is something you could find on a QAnon message board. The president and Democrats in Congress have been very, very clear about working in a bipartisan manner to secure the border, to make it easier for people to have the type of security that they deserve economically, to deal with real issues around healthcare, around housing costs, and to try to do that everywhere they can in a bipartisan way. And I would just say, to the senator's colleagues, I heard him say, nobody wants a border deal except for Mitch McConnell. I'm not sure if he's aware, but Mitch McConnell is the leader of the Republicans in the Senate. And so when the leader of your caucus wants something, that's the position of your caucus. And for once, I'd like Senator Johnson to listen to Mitch McConnell and pass this tough bipartisan deal.
I know this is not your bailiwick, but I do want to, we keep getting this, there's going to be Biden executive action, there's going to be Biden executive action. And Senator used the term double-edged sword to talk about tariffs, but that applies to executive action by the White House too, right? Even when the administration floats the possibility of making asylum rules tougher or doing these other things, there's immediate blowback from people who say that he is re-engaging on Trump policies. How do you thread that needle politically?
Listen, I think what the president has done on a whole host of issues is what he always does. He listens as well as leads. As it relates to immigration, as the president said, there is a tough bipartisan border deal that's in the Senate. Hopefully, if it does leave the Senate, Speaker Johnson takes it up, quickly passes that bill, gets it to the president's desk. As it relates to trade, the president has been very clear. China is a huge competitor for America. That's why the president has done things like the Chips and Science Act, where now across this country, we are building those critical chips that we need right here in America, not sort of held hostage by China's saber rattling and across the country.
And if Pennsylvania likes tariffs, and Pennsylvania is the most important swing state, then both presidential candidates are liable to like tariffs. Okay, we're going to look live now at Atlanta, Georgia, where President Biden is ready to speak at Morehouse College. In his speech to the NAACP last week, the president compared the MAGA movement to the segregationists of the 1950s and 1960s. And I want you to look at what Bernice King, the daughter of world historic civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., said in a Bloomberg interview. She said, "I think there are people in the black community who are feeling like not a lot has changed. The messaging has to improve. The people who have benefited from the administration, I should say, need to be speaking." But it seems like, and I know this isn't the entirety of the president's message, but it seems like the message is basically, I'm better than Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is the same as Bull Connor. That's a pretty harsh, kind of negative sounding message. Is that good enough?
Listen, I think anytime we talk about any election and we don't lead with talking about the stakes, we've made a big mistake. Here's the stakes for this election. There are so many things that are on the line for Black Americans, for folks who look just like me, for my family, whether it is the sky-high cost of housing and putting people in a position where they can buy that first home, whether we're talking about safety and people being and feeling safe in their community, whether we're talking about access to a high-quality education and not leaving, if you choose to go to a four-year institution or two-year institution, saddled by debt. It's talking about doing things like continuing to lower the cost of healthcare. And so if those are the stakes, then the question becomes, who is better positioned to actually positively impact those things? We have Joe Biden, who isn't just talking about these issues, but has a real record of success. Cut the cost of insulin to $35 a month. Albeit the Supreme Court stymied the more expansive student loan forgiveness that he wants to do, but he's used every tool in his disposal to cancel hundreds of millions of dollars as it relates to student loans. You look at what he's proposed as it relates to housing. And so we have somebody in Joe Biden who has a record of success, who has laid out a vision for the future, and then you have Donald Trump on the other side who is out of control. And so really you're asking me, do I want a plate of chicken or do I want to eat a plate of broken glass? I think I'm going to pick Joe Biden.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.